All right, it's district breakdown time. We are doing 6-5A Division I. The Frisco district plus in there +1 is Sherman. We're with Professor Diggs. And Diggsy, what do you think about this district? They're finally all back together again. I know they were together a while, a couple, 2-3 realignments ago, but they're all moved up to Division I here. Not all of them, but a big majority to make a whole Frisco district. What is your initial thoughts?
Well, I have a question for you, Ward, because, I like to give you questions as well. We have this give and take, maybe a future podcast down the road where we have to show our personalities. So the question is, Ward, what you going to do when the 6-5A picks run wild over you?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm kind of scared about that, but let me hear what you got, and I'll tell you my reaction later.
And this district has made me. It's gotten in my head because you want to think Lone Star number one, and but Lone Star, they have to replace so much year after year because they have such great talent like Ashton Jeanty and Garrett Ringel. But then they also have to replace the coaches as well because they are like one of the most picked over coaching staff in the state of Texas. John Fish and Clint Surratt, just at the time as we're taping, are now head coaches elsewhere. So Lone Star, you want to kind of tag them as the number one. But again, you have to keep asking year after year, can they recover it? And almost kind of reminds me of Hebron 10 to 15 years ago after they won their state championship and their assistant coaches became the big dogs and getting picked off. And eventually Hebron just kind of came from the big dog to just kind of a middle of the road team. So is that going to be Lone Star's fate this year? But again, last year they had a very weird situation where they had two quarterbacks and both quarterbacks ended up being all district despite the fact that Garrett was such a fantastic, top tier quarterback, but Gabriel Barrientos made his mark as well, and they get him coming back with varsity experience, even though they had such a big name in Garrett last year. And they have a pretty good wide receiver in Jalen Braxton that they're going to get to throw to him. So Lone Star should be ready for Bear. But then if you look at last season, at the end of the season, Frisco Lakeland with some very young talent kind of stepped up. And not only did they beat Highland Park, but they played College Station more competitively than Frisco Lone Star did. So you could make a pretty good case for Frisco Lakeland to be the number one team in this district. And I think plenty of people will. But they say, Ward, to be the man, you got to beat the man, and Lone Star has been the man.
That is true, man. But you bring up Barrientos. He really, when he got thrown in the fire, there was that Alito game, and he actually played really good. He's part of that big comeback for them, and they ended up falling short. And, of course, bringing up the Wakeland-Highland Park game, Wakeland will probably say that was one of their biggest wins, if not their biggest win in school history, and they got something to build off of. What do you think about some of these other Frisco teams, especially Frisco High, who's getting back up into Division I here and playing some ball?
Yeah, and Frisco High has been one of those teams that have been right there every single year. But if we're going to talk about, we got to talk about Frisco Wakeland and their studs real quick because Connor Stroh, he's a highlight film all by himself. 6'7", 345, a man among men in a district full of pretty good-sized kids. He's somebody who's going to stand out anytime you see Frisco Wakeland. Brennan Meyer, the sophomore quarterback who will be a junior coming back. So they've got some talent as well to kind of back up that lofty ranking. I think we're going to see Wakeland, in top rankings just about everywhere. But Frisco has, to me, one of the best players in the district as well, in Brandon Miazono. He really caught my eye last year at the SOC game, and it was a very heartwarming story. I know you had crew down there, and the SOC players were coming up and seeking him out and said, hey, kid, you left it all out on the field, and it was a real heartwarming moment down on Globe Life Field, getting to see that. And now he's getting SMU offers, and really he's kind of getting on the recruiting radar after really not being on the radar at all. And they also have Jordan Hamilton, the running back, coming back, and I think he's going to be a special player as well. And then from there, I think you got a lot of parity after Frisco High, and because 2 years ago, Frisco Liberty was a team that had a 20-game losing streak, and we're wondering if they're ever going to win another game. They're just going to kind of be at the bottom of the Frisco ISD pecking order. And then they got Keldrick Luster and Evan Stewart in there, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, this is a good team. But then that kind of disappeared. Keldrick Lester has transferred over to McKinney. Evan Stewart graduated, left early. And now I wonder if Frisco Liberty has taken some big steps back. I don't know what their JV and underclassmen are going to do to contribute to that. But I think a lot of people would have penciled in Frisco Liberty as a playoff team coming into the end of last season, coming into this season. But I don't think that's the case anymore, Ward.
Yeah, absolutely. That loss of Lester, because he was starting for them for 2 years. I mean, it's and he's gone now. So now you got to replace that. And speaking of other Frisco teams, another one of teams like that is Reedy, because you had Reedy 3 years ago where they were taking Alito in the rainstorm out in just the Northwest and trying to find a way to win that game, and now they're kind of middle of the pack. They had that run where they're at the top. Are they still middle of the pack, or do you think they may be one of the top four as well?
Yeah, I think they've gone from middle of the pack to maybe that fourth playoff spot because of what was happened at Frisco Liberty. I've got them penciled in at number 4 as a little spoiler alert. And they got some really good players. They got Aaron Daniels coming back, Josh Goins, great athlete, AJ J-Row and Caleb Smith at receivers. This is a team that I think, because of that experience you talked about a couple of years ago, and with enough tradition, I think they are that middle of the road team. But the one team that I think that we have to also keep an eye on for that middle of the pack kind of a team is, I know you love Frisco ISD, but we got to talk about Sherman and my guy Corey Kane over there. And Corey Kane has broken my heart more times than I can count when he was over at Allen, and now he's over at Sherman, creating his own identity. And Sherman's really got a tough run the next couple of years, because Sherman is just on a rocket ship up to 6A with all the growth up there in Grayson County. I think Sherman will be 6A next realignment, and they're going to probably get in that northern 6A district with Allen and the Prosper schools, and maybe even a Denton Geyer, and that's gonna be really rough for them, and they're gonna have some growing pains up there. But I know a lot of people are talking about on the recruiting trail the new kid Zadavian Sims that is just really coming out and showing big in camp. So I think Sherman is going to have some good players, and especially some move-ins to accompany this big growth out there. I think we're going to see Reedy, Sherman, and Liberty right in the middle of that pack fighting for that 4th spot.
That leaves the last 3 Frisco teams: Heritage, Lebanon Trail, and Centennial. Your thoughts on them? Are they competing for the last 3 spots? Or is somebody going to be able to maybe get a sneak in there with the turnover here, turnover there?
Yeah, Frisco ISD has such good parity year in and year out. It's still such a high growth area. It just takes a couple of move-ins and a couple of players that were off of our radar to be on our radar, and all of a sudden they're now a team we're talking about in the playoff race. I have them as the bottom 3 teams. You can kind of mix them up in any order you want. I've got it Heritage, Lebanon Trail, and Frisco Centennial for the bottom 3. Frisco Centennial has a really good running back coming back, and Harry Stewart. I think he's going to be one of the top players in the district as well, but I don't know if they have the infrastructure to support him, or if he's just going to run wild and it's just going to be the Harry Stewart show. Frisco Heritage has a really good young up-and-coming player, Jair Cogshell, that is showing up on the recruiting radar. And then Lebanon Trail's got Tim Madison and Carson Cox as 2 good players to watch as well.
Before we get into your top 4, your predictions for top 4, I'd like to hear your opinion on now it's an all Frisco district. There is huge familiarity there. They've played each other probably from 6th grade on. I asked Coach Herbert about that, and I'm thinking he would say, yeah, it's kind of an advantage, but he actually said the players were kind of disappointed. They enjoyed playing teams that they don't see all the time, that they haven't seen all the teams, the Lovejoys and whatnot. What's your thought? How much do you have credence in, being able to be familiar with almost all the teams? Obviously, with the high gas prices, it's nice to only have to go to 3 stadiums and maybe one trip out to Sherman. But talk to me about what you think about the familiarity in this district.
Yeah, the familiarity, but again, when we're talking about Frisco ISD, there's so many middle schools and so much growth. They all know each other, but it's not that hometown kind of a feeling, because Frisco's got a little bit of Plano, it's got a little bit of Prosper, it's got a little bit of McKinney. So, although they've been playing each other, and then you have them divided up into 5AD1, 5AD2, and even some 4AD2 or 4AD1 with some of the newer schools, I don't think it's that backyard kind of feeling like it might be. Obviously, they're going to have some familiarity, especially with the big players, but there's so many move-ins as well that continue to dominate the landscape of Frisco ISD. I'm not sure that it's going to play as much of a factor in that. But, I think when we talk about this district, I have to be remiss to talk about the little controversy in this district, and that really should be McKinney North in this district. Sherman, I don't know what the UIL maps were doing when they created this. Maybe it's a little bit payback for the year that McKinney Boyd had to jump over Allen to get into the Garland ISD district, so that they're making things right by putting McKinney North in that big district we're going to talk about next week, and then all of a sudden Sherman is in this district. It doesn't make sense, but I think Sherman is very thankful that it did end up this way, and I think they're going to do everything they can to take advantage of that. That
is true, and that brings us to our top four in this district. Who do you think the four playoff teams will be? And I might go one step further. How you feel they will do in the playoffs as well? Are the top four teams, can they advance to round or two? I know they're going to be playing the 5-5A, which is not as talented except for maybe Timberview. So they may be going 2 rounds deep. But anyway, let's talk about the top four and how you feel they will do.
Well, I got number 1, I got Frisco Lone Star. I've got number 2, Wakeland, but I think within a touchdown or two, or I think these are very close. I've got Frisco 3, I've got Frisco Reedy number 4, and I'm going to keep going on you. I got Sherman 5, Frisco Liberty 6, Frisco Heritage 7, Frisco Lebanon Trail 8, and Frisco Centennial 9th spot. And I think that we will see Frisco Lone Star, Frisco Wakeland, and Frisco all win their first playoff game as well. And I think a team like a Reedy or a Sherman would give Timberview a pretty good tussle in the first round of the playoffs. So that would be one of my upset watch picks for right now. But again, Timberview might blow me away. I know we had a little bit of disagreement last week off air where I think you have Timberview a little higher than I do in my mental rankings. So we'll see how Timberview plays out as the season continues.
I look forward to talking to you next week.
See you next week.